Okay, so what if I told you that your deepest despair over, say, a massive career collapse,
Hmm.
or that suffocating anxiety you feel when a relationship fractures, isn't actually caused by the event itself?
Right, which sounds completely counterintuitive at first.
It really does. I mean, what if that overwhelming psychological torment that just keeps you awake at 3 a.m. is largely an unconscious habit, like a biological and psychological reflex that this ancient blueprint we're looking at today claims you can actively, permanently uncouple yourself from?
Yeah, and that is a massive claim.
It's huge. So today on this deep dive, we are looking at a stack of notes centered on two very specific verses from ancient antiquity. We're talking about Shloka 6.22 and 6.23. And, this material doesn't just offer some mild theoretical comfort for a stressful Tuesday.
No, it really doesn't.
It outlines an actual structural mechanism for surviving a modern world that honestly often feels like it is engineered to completely break our minds.
And the baseline reality established in the opening lines of this text is, I think, what makes it so incredibly relevant to you, the modern listener.
Yeah, lay that out for us.
Well, there is no utopian promise here. There's no magical thinking that suggests if you just, meditate correctly, your life is going to be smoothed out into this flat, frictionless plane.
Right, like good vibes only.
Exactly. None of that. The text operates on a stark, uncompromising admission, which is that you lived in an environment that absolutely guarantees turbulence.
That word guarantees is heavy,
It is.
because we spend so much of our daily energy trying to engineer our lives
Okay.
to prevent that exact turbulence. Like, we buy the right insurance, we try to optimize our diets, we meticulously plan our career trajectories,
Yeah, we try to control every variable.
all with this underlying assumption that if we're just smart enough or careful enough, we can somehow outrun the instability.
But the text just flat out says, no, the instability is a fundamental property of the system you inhabit. You can't outrun it.
Which is terrifying, but also kind of liberating. I mean, look at the sheer volume of instability we process today compared to when these verses were first spoken.
Right. The source material uses these timeless examples, right?
Right.
Like aging bodies, the loss of loved ones, the shifting of fortunes.
But then you lay that over our current reality. Markets crash with a single algorithmic error.
Boom. Your retirement is gone.
Exactly. Entire industries are rendered obsolete overnight by some new tech. And beyond our personal spheres, we are carrying the psychological weight of global anxieties, just streaming onto these glowing rectangles in our pockets every waking hour of the day.
It's relentless. And the text doesn't offer a macroeconomic solution to the market, and it doesn't offer a way to prevent human aging.
Right, it doesn't fix the world.
Because the environment is inherently unstable, the only variable you actually have access to is your own internal architecture.
And man, the architecture most of us are currently operating with usually defaults to one of two extremes when that turbulence actually hits.
Yeah, we really only have two modern settings.
Right. When the pressure gets too high, we either completely fragment and break down, like the anxiety takes a wheel, we spiral, and we just collapse under the sheer weight of it all.
Or we swing to the exact opposite end of the spectrum.
We numb out. We find the nearest psychological anesthetic. We scroll on social media for 4 hours. We consume whatever distraction is closest. We build these thick walls so we just don't have to feel the friction of the world anymore.
And both of those, the breakdown and the numbing, they're just survival mechanisms.
Right, like pulling your hand off a hot stove.
Exactly. When you touch a hot stove, your hand pulls back involuntarily. When the psychological environment becomes overwhelming, your mind attempts to pull back through distraction, or it simply short circuits into a breakdown.
But the argument presented in these verses is that these are fundamentally primitive, deeply flawed strategies.
They leave you completely at the mercy of the next storm. I mean, numbing the pain of a broken bone doesn't reset the bone.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
It just means you're walking around on a fractured limb, pretending everything is fine until it inevitably just gives out entirely.
So we need a third option. We need a way to walk through the fire without burning to ash, but also without wearing a hazmat suit that keeps us from feeling the warmth of life entirely.
It's a beautiful metaphor, yeah.
And that's really the mission of this deep dive today. The text points us toward a radical redefinition of a concept called yoga.
A word that has been entirely stripped of its original psychological power in our modern culture, I might add.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
But it uses this original definition to build what it calls an unshakable anchor.
But to understand the mechanics of building that anchor, we have to know what the end state actually looks like first.
Right. We need to visualize the destination. which is laid out in Shloka 6.22. So let me just read the exact translation from our notes here.
Go for it.
Okay, it says, upon gaining this realization of the self, one considers no other gain to be superior to it. Being established in this state, one is not shaken even by the heaviest of sorrows.
And the notes highlight the Sanskrit word there, garuti.
Garupi, meaning the absolute heaviest, most profound sorrows imaginable.
The densest, most immovable tragedies a human being can possibly face. The kind that fundamentally altered the entire trajectory of a life.
Okay, hold on though. Not shaken by the heaviest of sorrows.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pause right here because, I mean, if my house burns to the ground, or if I lose a child, or if my entire life's work is publicly destroyed, and I am not shaken.
I know where you're going with this.
Like, I'm not enlightened at that point. I'm a sociopath. I am profoundly disconnected from my own humanity. When I read this initially, it just sounds like the text is dressing up emotional numbing in spiritual language.
Which is a very common and very dangerous misinterpretation.
Right. Because are we honestly supposed to aspire to become these unfeeling stone statues when tragedy rips our lives apart?
No, absolutely not. If we interpret unshakable as unfeeling, we have completely misread the blueprint.
Yeah.
And we've just fallen right back into that trap of numbing we were just talking about.
Okay, so unpack that for me. Because not shaken sounds pretty unfeeling.
Well, the text does not advocate for clinical detachment. In fact, later clarifications in the source material explicitly state that in this realized state, you still feel the pain of the material world.
So feelings are still there.
The sensory and emotional input still registers, yes. The tears still happen. The difference lies in the structural integrity of where you process that pain.
Okay, I need a visual for that.
Consider the physical mechanics of the ocean.
Okay, the ocean. Let's picture it during a massive Category 5 hurricane.
Perfect. So the surface of the ocean in that hurricane is absolute bedlam.
Right, 50-foot waves, wind howling.
The wind is tearing the water apart, waves are cresting, marine life is getting thrown around, the turbulence is violent, and it is very real. The ocean is undoubtedly experiencing the hurricane.
We can't say the ocean is numb to the storm.
Exactly. But if you were to submerge and travel down 200, 500, 1,000 feet, the physics of the environment change entirely.
Oh, because down in the deep, it's completely calm?
In the benthic zones, the water is virtually motionless. It's silent. It is profoundly still. Now, the deep ocean isn't ignoring the storm. It isn't in denial about the hurricane happening above.
The hurricane is still happening to the ocean.
Yes, but the core depths are structurally immune to this surface chaos.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So the surface of the water is our physiological and emotional reality.
Precisely.
When the heavy sorrow hits, the grupi, our surface is going to churn violently. The tears are going to fall. The grief is going to physically ache in our chest. Our autonomic nervous system is going to completely react.
You will feel it.
The text isn't demanding that we don't cry. It's revealing that we are not solely comprised of the surface water.
Yes, beneath that churning emotional response, there's a depth of consciousness that the storm simply does not have the reach to disturb.
So it's the difference between identifying exclusively as the waves versus identifying as the entire body of water.
If you believe you are only the surface, a hurricane is an existential threat. You will be entirely consumed by it.
Because there's nowhere else for you to be.
Exactly. But when the text talks about being established in this state, it means your center of gravity has shifted downward.
You allow the grief to happen on the surface. You feel it fully and deeply, but it doesn't uproot your foundation because your anchor is resting in the deep water.
That is the unshakable nature it's talking about.
Right.
Not a lack of feeling, but a presence of depth.
I love that. But, you know, the verse makes an incredibly audacious claim in its first half, though. It says, upon gaining this, one considers no other gain to be superior to it.
No other gain, period.
That is a massive indictment of how 99% of us live our lives today.
It really is.
Because from the time we're kids, we are conditioned to measure our lives in external gains. We acquire the degree, we get the partner, we acquire the square footage, the stock portfolio, the social
But
status.
surface-level metrics.
And here is this text from antiquity, looking at the entirety of human ambition and casually stating that none of it, literally nothing you can put your hands on, is superior to this internal stabilization.
Well, to grasp the logic behind that absolute claim, we have to audit the nature of the external gains you just listed.
Okay, audit them how?
What is the fundamental vulnerability of the degree, the partner, the square footage, and the portfolio?
I mean, they can all disappear tomorrow.
Every single one of them is contingent on the very environment that the text has already declared as fundamentally unstable.
Oh, right. They belong to the surface of the ocean.
The market can wipe out the portfolio, biology can wipe out your health, time and circumstance can alter or destroy literally any relationship.
So if you designate a material achievement as your ultimate gain, you're effectively building your psychological foundation on a fault line.
You resign yourself to a life of perpetual low-grade terror. You're constantly scanning the horizon for the earthquake that will take away the things that define your worth.
It's a hostage situation. We work our whole lives to acquire these things, and then we spend the rest of our lives held hostage by the fear of losing them. If my ultimate happiness is predicated on my company succeeding, my emotional baseline is just at the mercy of global supply chains and consumer trends, things I have literally zero control over.
But the joy derived from this inner anchor is described in the text as existing independently of the senses.
Meaning it doesn't need external validation.
It does not require a specific configuration of external matter to exist. It doesn't need your bank account to hit a certain number, and it doesn't even require your physical body to be free from illness.
Wow.
Because it is self-generated and independent of the volatile material world, it is the singular asset in the human experience that cannot be stolen, depreciated, or destroyed.
It's the only secure investment.
That is exactly why it is the superior gain.
Okay, I think the logic there is undeniable. Become the deep ocean, secure the one asset the world cannot take from you, and survive the heaviest sorrows. It's a beautiful destination.
It is.
But a destination without a map is just a fantasy. If I'm listening to this right now, I'm probably thinking, cool, I am currently trapped on the surface of the ocean getting battered by waves. I would love to be in the silent deep. But how do I physically, psychologically transport myself there?
Right. What's the actual mechanism?
Yeah. And this is where the source material pivots from philosophy to pure, actionable mechanics in Shloka 6.23. It introduces the vehicle to get to the depths. And to do it, it completely shatters our modern understanding of the word yoga.
The commodification of that word is honestly one of the great cultural misunderstandings of our time.
It really is.
Yeah.
If you say yoga today, the immediate mental image is a bright studio, expensive Lululemon pants, a rolled-up mat, and, I don't know, attempting a handstand.
Or goats. Goat yoga.
Goat yoga, exactly. It's become a fitness regimen. It's about hamstring flexibility, core strength, and maybe some deep breathing to lower your heart rate.
We have physicalized an ancient psychological technology.
Yes. But verse 6.23 rips that modern definition apart. It defines yoga with a specific Sanskrit phrase. Dukkha sa yoga viyoga.
Dukkha sa yoga viyoga.
And the translation provided in our notes is the severance or the uncoupling from the union with sorrow.
If a listener takes only one concept away from this entire analysis, it should be the architecture of this specific phrase. This isn't about stretching your body. This is a profound, active psychological intervention.
When I was trying to wrap my head around the severance from the union with sorrow, I kept coming back to a mechanical visual.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine a massive, heavy freight train moving down a track. You have the locomotive at the very front, the engine. That is you.
Yep.
That is your core consciousness, your awareness, the I that experiences life.
Okay, I'm with you. The engine is the self.
Right. And directly hitched behind your engine is this massive, windowless, lead-lined boxcar. And that boxcar is filled to the brim with despair, anxiety, grief, and suffering. That's the dukkha, the sorrow.
The heavy payload.
The heavy payload. Now, the way most of us operate is that we go through our entire lives with that boxcar of sorrow firmly coupled to our engine. We drag it everywhere. We feel its immense weight dragging us backward on every single incline. We are intimately linked to it.
That is a perfect mechanical translation of the concept.
Because if modern yoga is about stretching your calves, this ancient yoga is about stretching the psychological space between your core consciousness and your despair.
Yes.
It is the deliberate act of walking back to the hitch, connecting your engine to that heavy boxcar, grabbing the heavy iron pin and pulling it up.
You are uncoupling the cars.
Exactly. The boxcar of sorrow doesn't vanish. The tragedy still happened. The boxcar is still sitting right there on the tracks. But it is no longer structurally attached to your engine. It's no longer moving with you. Yoga is the act of pulling the pin.
Let's validate that analogy against the ancient linguistics, because the Sanskrit aligns beautifully with what you just described.
Really? How so?
Well, the word yoga itself traditionally translates to union or to yoke, literally, to hitch two things together, like an ox to a cart.
Okay, quick hitch.
The text then introduces the prefix vi, creating the word viyoga. This negates the union, It means disunion, severance, disentanglement, uncoupling.
So the practice of this advanced spiritual state is essentially the practice of unyoking yourself.
Exactly, pulling the pin.
Wait, but this exposes something incredibly unsettling about human nature, doesn't it?
What's that?
If the highest spiritual achievement, this immense disciplined practice of yoga, is defined as the active uncoupling from sorrow, what does that imply about our baseline operating system?
It implies that our default untrained condition is to be inextricably bound to our suffering.
We are born hitched to the boxcar.
The text uses the word sayoga, meaning intimate union. It's telling us that human beings do not simply encounter sorrow like a passing cloud. We actively grab it, internalize it, and weld it to our core identity.
We really do.
Yeah.
We couple with it so tightly that the boundary between who we are and what we are suffering completely dissolves.
It's completely enmeshed.
Like when we go through a terrible period, we don't naturally say, oh, I am a consciousness currently experiencing a high volume of sadness data.
No one talks like that.
No. We look in the mirror and say, I am a depressed person. We don't say, my bank account was depleted. We say, I am a failure. We take a circumstantial event and we absorb it as our identity.
It's immediate.
But why on earth do we do this? Evolutionarily, biologically, nobody wakes up wanting to suffer. Why is our default setting to fuse our identity with our most painful experiences?
It's actually a deeply flawed misapplication of our evolutionary survival software.
Software, like our brain chemistry.
Yes. The human brain is, at its core, a meaning-making machine. In the ancestral environment, if you encountered a threat, say a predator, your brain needed to fuse your entire state of being with fear and urgency so you would survive.
Like you don't have time to ponder the tiger. You have to become the panic to run away.
Exactly. The event and the emotion had to be identical for you to act fast enough. But in the modern world, the threats are mostly abstract. They're market crashes, social rejections, stalled careers.
We aren't running from tigers, we're running from emails.
Right, but our brains still apply that primal fusion. We try to control the abstract, terrifying randomness of the world by turning it into a narrative about ourselves.
We unconsciously believe that if we merge with the sorrow, if we own it as our identity, we somehow have agency over it.
We think we can solve it if we become it. Which brings us right into the actual anatomy of how this suffering is manufactured. There's a vital distinction the text makes in our notes. The difference between pain and the narrative we build around the pain.
Yes, the notes state very clearly that pain in this material world is an absolute inevitability, but suffering, the psychological torment, is entirely optional.
This is the crux of the entire psychological intervention. We must separate the raw data of existence from the editorializing we layer on top of it.
Let's make this incredibly visceral for the listener, because the text talks about modern turbulence, like career stalling or relationships ending. Let's look at a micro example of this that happens every single day.
Give me a scenario.
Okay, it's 4:55 p.m. on a Friday. You are packing up your bag, looking forward to the weekend, and your phone vibrates. It's a Slack message from your boss that just says, we need to have a serious talk about your performance. My office, 9 a.m. Monday.
Oh, wow. The biological response to that is instantaneous.
Right. Your stomach drops, your heart rate spikes, adrenaline floods your system, the weekend is instantly ruined. Now let's break down the anatomy of that moment using the text's framework.
Okay, let's start with the pain.
The event, the pain, is the raw data. The data is simply pixels on a screen arranged in a specific sequence of words sent by a specific person, indicating a future conversation about work performance.
Very clinical.
Right. And the biological pain is the adrenaline spike. That is the inevitable part. The text isn't saying you shouldn't feel a jolt of anxiety. You have a nervous system, it's going to react to a perceived threat.
But the suffering hasn't actually started yet. The suffering requires you to add a crucial ingredient.
The narrative. The event plus the story equals the identity.
That's the formula.
The moment that Slack message hits, your storytelling brain kicks in at light speed. You don't just process the raw data. You immediately add the narrative. My boss hates me.
Yeah.
I am going to be fired. I am incompetent.
That snowballs.
It totally snowballs. My peers are going to find out. I won't be able to pay my mortgage. My partner is going to lose respect for me. I am fundamentally a failure. You take a neutral, albeit stressful calendar invite, and you weaponize it into an indictment of your core worth as a human being.
And this is exactly how sayoga, the union with sorrow, occurs in real time.
It happens in milliseconds.
The psychological torment that ruins your entire weekend isn't caused by the Slack message itself. The message is just a catalyst. The torment is entirely generated by the narrative you chose to hitch to the event.
The despair is in the story, not the
The
circumstance.
text makes that explicitly clear.
It's like we're handed a small cut, and our immediate instinct is to rub poison into it just to figure out why it hurts.
Or like looking at an X-ray, the pain is just the localized broken bone on the film.
But the suffering is us looking at the X-ray and deciding that because the bone is broken, we are fundamentally flawed and will never walk again.
Exactly. The profound realization of Shloka 6.23 is that you cannot control the Slack message.
You can't.
You cannot perfectly control the boss or the market or the external turbulence. The goal of yoga, the Viyoga, is to intervene at the plus sign in your equation.
Event plus story. You insert a wedge right there at the plus.
You allow the event to happen, you feel the raw biological data, but you violently refuse to let the story attach to it.
You pull the pin. You say, I see the boxcar of potential unemployment and failure over there on the tracks. It is scary, but I am not going to hitch it to my engine today.
Precisely. Now, understanding this on a deep dive, sitting in the typewriter of your car or your living room, is intellectually satisfying. It makes perfect logical sense.
Oh, it's so easy to be enlightened when you're just listening to audio. Like, yes, of course, I am not my job. I am not my anxiety. I am the deep ocean.
We all feel very wise right now.
We do. But let's be fiercely honest. When that Slack message actually hits your phone, or when the doctor walks into the room with a somber look on their face, logic evaporates.
It completely goes out the window.
The amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, hijacks the entire nervous system. The event and the story fuse together as if they were welded by lightning. So in the heat of the moment, how do we actually pull the pin?
That is the ultimate question.
Because if our plan is to just read these verses and wait for a massive life crisis to test our new uncoupling skills, we're going to fail spectacularly. The boxcar is going to run us over.
Which is exactly why ancient contemplative traditions do not tell you to prepare for the hurricane by waiting for the hurricane.
They give you a training ground.
They do. The text provides a rigorous daily training ground. It explicitly instructs the practitioner to negotiate this today. Do not wait for the guropi, the heavy sorrow.
You have to practice the uncoupling on the micro-turbulences of daily life, the small storms.
Yeah.
Now, our notes list examples for this, like being cut off in traffic or receiving a passive-aggressive email. And I have to admit, when I first read that, I felt a bit underwhelmed.
It sounds a bit mundane, doesn't it?
Very mundane. We're talking about realizing our ultimate immortal self, achieving the highest possible spiritual gain, becoming an unshakable mountain. And the text wants me to practice on a guy who didn't use his turn signal on the highway.
It feels incredibly trivial.
Right. Why waste our spiritual energy on minor irritations? Shouldn't we be doing, like, intense meditation retreats to prepare for the big stuff?
It only seems trivial until you understand the neurobiology of habit formation. The mechanism by which your brain fuses your identity with the anger of being cut off in traffic is the exact same neural pathway by which it will fuse your identity with the despair of a terminal diagnosis or financial ruin.
Oh, well. It's the same pathway.
The pathway doesn't change, only the volume of the stimulus changes.
So it's about muscle memory.
It's exactly like physical training. If the ultimate goal is to deadlift a 400-pound weight, which represents the heavy sorrow, you would never walk into a gym on your first day and attempt to lift it.
No, your spine would snap.
You begin with 20 pounds. You begin with the empty bar. You have to condition the muscle tissue, the central nervous system, and your structural alignment over thousands of minor repetitive lifts before you can safely handle the massive load.
So psychological resilience is built identically.
Identically. The guy cutting you off in traffic is the 20-pound weight. The frustrating email is the empty bar.
If you lack the psychological strength to prevent a frustrating email from hijacking your identity and ruining your morning, you possess zero structural integrity to withstand a true tragedy.
You will collapse.
That reframes the daily annoyances completely for me. They aren't just irritations anymore. They are the gym.
They are free reps.
Every time the Wi-Fi drops, every time a toddler throws a tantrum, every time the coffee order is wrong, it is a free repetition to practice pulling the pin. So what is the actual technique? Let's take the traffic example. Someone swerves into your lane, you slam on the brakes, your heart rate hits 120, the rage is boiling up into your throat. In that exact fraction of a second, what is the practice?
The text provides a mechanism that modern clinical psychology now refers to as cognitive diffusion. It gives you a literal internal script.
Okay, what's the script?
When the event happens and the biological spike occurs, notice your instinct to merge with the anger. Notice the impulse to say, I am furious. And consciously, deliberately force your internal monologue to state, I observe this frustration, but it is not me.
I observe this frustration, but it is not me. Let's dissect the absolute genius of that phrasing because it is doing so much heavy lifting neurologically.
Break it down.
When you get cut off, your amygdala is screaming, threat, fight, and your automatic thought is, I am angry. You have become the emotion.
You are fused with it.
The emotion is the entirety of your conscious landscape. There is no separation. But the moment you exert the mental effort to say, I observe this frustration, you force the prefrontal cortex, the logical advanced part of your brain, to come online.
And you fundamentally alter the geometry of your consciousness.
Yes. You introduce a subject-object relationship.
By definition, if you are the entity observing the frustration, you cannot be the frustration.
That cannot see itself.
Exactly. The observer is distinct from the object being observed. You have just pulled the pin on the train cars.
You are the engine, the silent, witnessing awareness, looking back at the boxcar of rage.
You've created a psychological gap. You're saying, I see you, frustration. You are very loud. Your biological signature is making my hands shake on the steering wheel. You are taking up a vast amount of space in my nervous system right now, but you are over there as an object, and I am over here as the observer.
And the second half of the mantra seals the perimeter.
Oh.
But it is not me. You explicitly reject the identity merger.
This is crucial.
And notice what the text is not telling you to do. It isn't telling you to take deep breaths and chant, I am peaceful, I am serene, while someone almost runs you off the road.
No, that is toxic positivity.
That is delusion. You are absolutely feeling the physiological reality of the anger. You are fully experiencing the pain of the small storm. But by saying, it is not me, you are actively preventing the event from turning into the story.
You are severing the narrative. You don't build the story of, everyone is out to get me, the city is awful, my life is a constant battle.
The anger simply arises, exists as a temporary biological phenomenon, and because it is not being fed by a narrative, it eventually dissipates.
Like a wave cresting and then flattening out into the deep ocean.
It is an incredibly elegant defense system. But I have to bring us back to the reality of the human condition here.
Okay, lay it on me.
I can memorize the mantra. I can commit to practicing on the 20-pound weights in traffic. But I am going to fail. We are all going to fail.
Of course we are.
There are going to be days where I am tired or hungry or deeply stressed, and that Slack message is going to hit. And I am not going to observe the frustration. I'm going to dive headfirst into the boxcar of despair and weld the doors shut from the inside.
It happens to the best of us.
And there are going to be days where the gurubi, the heavy sorrow, hits with such violence that it reaches all the way down to the ocean floor and churns up the sand. Because we are flawed biological creatures. So what happens when the anchor drags?
This is where the ancient wisdom reveals its profound compassion and its really deep understanding of human frailty. It anticipates this exact failure.
It knows we're going to mess up.
It absolutely does. And it addresses it in the final and perhaps most vital instruction found in the second half of Shloka 6.23. It commands us to practice this yoga, this daily uncoupling with an untiring mind.
An untiring mind.
The specific Sanskrit term used is anirvinchetasa.
Anirvijitasa.
Our notes translate this beautifully as a mind free from despair, free from depression, and free from the exhaustion of self-judgment. The text bakes the acknowledgement of failure right into the instruction. It knows you will falter. It knows the sorrow will occasionally overwhelm your defenses.
But it gives this paramount directive.
Right. When you fail, you must not become frustrated with your lack of progress. You must practice with a gentle, undespairing determination.
Which introduces a massive psychological paradox for the modern listener.
How so?
Well, our notes point out that the text demands absolute ironclad determination, like firm resolve, to practice this uncoupling. Yet in the exact same breath, it forbids you from getting upset with yourself when you fail at it.
Right.
How do you reconcile those two things? Because in our modern hyper-competitive culture, determination is inextricably linked to self-punishment.
We rely on a deeply toxic motivational architecture.
We really do. We treat our internal lives like a 1980s Wall Street trading floor. We believe that the only way to improve, the only way to show true determination, is to scream at ourselves when we fall short.
The hustle culture mentality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It dictates that if I fail, I need to ruthlessly criticize myself so I'm properly motivated to do better next time. We use guilt and shame as the fuel for our progress.
Letting go of that self-punishing mechanism is terrifying for most people.
Because we think we'll just give up.
We unconsciously believe that if we stop beating ourselves up, we will become lazy, complacent, and never achieve anything. We think the inner tyrant is the only thing keeping us in line.
But the text warns us that this inner tyrant is the ultimate trap in the practice of yoga.
Let's trace the logic of what happens when you use self-punishment in this specific context. You are attempting to uncouple from sorrow. You experience a moment of weakness and you get dragged into a spiral of anxiety. You realize you failed.
Okay.
If your response is to then get angry at yourself, to feel shame that your practice is weak, to despair that you will never reach enlightenment, what have you just done?
Oh, this is devastating. You've just recursively manufactured a brand new layer of suffering. You failed to detach from the first boxcar, and your response is to immediately hitch a second, heavier boxcar labeled, I am a spiritual failure, right behind it.
You are literally generating the exact psychological torment you are actively trying to escape. Getting mad at yourself for getting mad is the ultimate recursive union with sorrow. It is a closed loop of despair.
Wow. That is why the demand for anirvanta chitahasa, the undespairing mind, is non-negotiable. It's the only way to cut the loop.
So what does determination actually look like without the inner tyrant? If we strip away the self-flagellation, what is left?
I think the best way to visualize this gentle determination is to look at how a master craftsman or a virtuoso musician practices.
Okay, a musician.
Imagine someone learning an incredibly complex, fast-paced piano sonata. When you're pushing the boundaries of your ability, you're going to hit a wrong key. The turbulence of learning guarantees it.
Mistakes are the inevitable data of progress.
Right. Now, a novice who is governed by the inner tyrant hits a wrong key, and they immediately slam their hands on the piano. They curse themselves, they sigh dramatically, they spiral into the narrative of, I have no talent, I'll never master this piece, this is embarrassing.
They have merged their identity with the mistake.
But a master musician doesn't do that. When a master hits an F instead of an F sharp, they don't despair. They don't take it personally. They simply play the very next note.
They just keep going.
They observe the error. My finger was off on that measure. And they seamlessly return to the rhythm of the piece. The determination is not found in the illusion of perfect execution. The determination is located entirely in the return.
That is the essence of Anirvinchatesa. The determination is the return.
It's beautiful.
The text does not say, punish yourself until you are perfectly centered. It says, simply return to your center. It is a quiet, deeply disciplined, emotionally neutral pivot back to the anchor.
And this brings us all the way back to the opening line of our source notes today, which states, the rhythm of our daily meeting is in itself a practice of discipline.
It's a daily rhythm.
The discipline of yoga, the discipline of emotional resilience, isn't about achieving a permanent static state of angelic serenity where you never feel anger or fear again. That is a myth.
A very pervasive myth.
The true discipline is the rhythm of returning. You get distracted by the world, you return to the center, you merge with your anxiety, you catch yourself, you pull the pin, you return.
You get overwhelmed by heavy sorrow, you allow the grief to wash over you, you locate your anchor in the deep water, and you return.
It is a constant, iterative, untiring practice of creating space.
It is the lifelong work of maintaining the boundary between your core consciousness and the weather patterns of your existence.
The weather. That is exactly the metaphor we need to land on, because the source notes leave us with one final, synthesizing image that encapsulates this entire philosophy.
What's the image?
It says, true stability is not avoiding the storm, it is realizing that you are the mountain, not the weather.
That is a stunning summation. Because as modern people, we spend vast amounts of our energy trying to be the meteorologists of our own lives.
We really do?
We're constantly trying to read the radar, trying to predict when the next storm will hit, trying to run away from the rain, or trying to artificially seed the clouds to force a sunny day.
We operate under the delusion that stability means a permanent forecast of clear skies.
But the environment guarantees turbulence. The weather will always, invariably, change.
And if you believe that your identity is tied to the weather, if you think you are the thunderstorm or you are the freezing rain, you will be constantly violently torn apart.
Your sense of self will be in a state of perpetual whiplash.
But if you deeply internalize the realization of Shloka 6.22, if you recognize that your core consciousness is the mountain, the entire paradigm shifts.
The mountain does not fear the rain.
No. The mountain does not have an anxiety attack when the snow begins to fall. The storm washes over the granite. It might obscure the peak from view for a while. It might even carve new rivers into the rock.
But the mountain itself remains entirely structurally unmoved.
It allows the weather to happen, knowing intimately that the weather is a temporary phenomenon, while the mountain is ancient and enduring.
You feel the rain hitting the rock, you process the pain of the material world, but you are not shaken by it.
You have pulled the pin. You have uncoupled your core identity from the passing clouds.
That is the realization of the self. That is the duha sayoga vyoga. That is the anchor in the deep water.
It fundamentally rewires how you interact with your own daily existence. Like the next time you feel that suffocating wave of dread or the spike of hot frustration or the crushing weight of a true sorrow, you don't have to panic.
You don't have to fight it, and you don't have to merge with it either.
You can simply observe it, create this space, and remind yourself, here is some heavy weather. I will feel it, and I will let it pass over the mountain. Because eventually, no matter how violent the storm is, it always passes.
The weather always breaks.
It always does. But as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over as you navigate your own storms this week. A thought that builds directly on this profound ancient mechanism of pulling the pin.
I'm curious where you're going with this.
Well, we have spent this entire time talking about the necessity of uncoupling our identity from our deepest sorrows, the heavy storms, the frustrations, and the pain.
Right.
We've mapped out how dangerous it is to merge our core worth with tragedy. But if we truly commit to this philosophy, if we truly realize that we are the mountain and not the weather, what happens when we apply that exact same rigorous uncoupling to our greatest external triumphs? What happens when we apply it to our massive career successes, our moments of overwhelming public praise, the days when the sun is shining perfectly on our peak and the world is telling us how incredible we are?
That's a huge shifting perspective.
Because if the tragedy is just passing weather that we shouldn't merge our identity with, our greatest material victories just passing weather too. And if they are, if you strip away all the accolades and the wins, who are you when the sun goes down?